We're discussing balance, everybody. Welcome to a little talk, because our dear friend Dondolare has provided us with a lot of statistics about the matchups, and now he also put out an explanation why these matchups are the way they are, and balance suggestions, and we'll take a look at that. First and foremost, we will look at the stats on the right hand side, right here. Average MMR at or above 2300, that is the highest level. That is where we think it's best to look at balance. Of course, if the matchup is imbalanced across all matchups, we should definitely take a look at that in like specifically, but sometimes the balance changes the better the player become, and then it's not a race or balance issue, then it's a player skill issue. So as you can see on the right hand side, there's 4 matchups. Just a reminder, if it's 2% difference between expected win rate and actual win rate, that's really not bad. That's the difference in check between white and black. So 2% is really, really good. What you can see is that Orc and Night Elf is slightly inferior. So the Night Elves are doing better than expected, and the Night Elves are doing better than expected. Those are the problematic matchups. This actually got a bit better. Also, the Night Elf Undead matchup got a bit better. So the meta is still settling, but still we can talk about balance as it is a pretty interesting topic. So from these statistics, and of course the statistics go a lot deeper, and you can read up on that yourself because we did discuss them. Dondolare is not also good with stats and numbers, and a nice and likable guy. He also is a pretty good player, I'd say. He was around 1900-ish, I would say, more or less. So let's take a look on what he has to say in his balance suggestions. Post-patch 1.36. The following document outlines some suggestions meant to further improve the balance in Warcraft 3. It should be noted that this document focuses on improving balance given the current meta and state of the game. As such, suggestions meant to increase the usage of certain units, heroes, and strategies in themselves won't be the focus here. For example, how do you fix necromancers, Neo? Will not be discussed here. Just the meta as it is. This means that I will not include any form of rework of units and heroes, as that is a task that is far beyond my cognitive and creative abilities to do in any meaningful way. And I think that goes for the entire scene, to be honest. Though I applaud those that have the mental capacity to come up with good ideas on how this should or can be done. For what it's worth, I'm by no means nor even close to being a very good player in this game. These suggestions based on my experience as a viewer, player, and person with a slightly above the average interest in statistics and math. So as I said before, these suggestions based on stats and experience or own experience. The data is presented here. That's what we just looked at. That being said, I do not by any means claim to make these suggestions from any point of authority, and as such my suggestions as anyone should be read with a critical eye by anyone who bothers to read this. That is me and you. The document will be structured as follows. The races will be presented in the following order: Human, Orc, Night Elf, Undead. Wonder why though. For every race, I will give a quick summary of the state and the different matchups they are involved in and the main challenges facing them. Thereafter, suggestions are presented with a short explanation and the reasoning behind it. Stop here. First and foremost, the way he does this by describing the matchup and then addressing it later in only after all the matchups are presented is very good. Also, Blizzard/Playside, take notes. Explain why you're changing things. That would be good. Starting with Human. Might be a little bit too early for Todd in Las Vegas right now, but we kick this off. We don't want him to get an aneurysm at the start of the day. Human versus Undead currently seems to be slightly favored for humans, especially below the top MMR bracket. That is correct. On the higher levels, the edge seems to be smaller. As a fairly well-balanced matchup, one can take a conservative approach here, and the main concern should be that changes targeted towards other matchups do not indirectly affect this matchup. I tend to agree. When both of these races end up on tier 3 and are in a similar tech state, this matchup can be amazing to watch. Undead is very oppressive in the early stages, and super late game, human is stronger than undead. It would be nice if we could find a way to even things out a little. That would be cool, so human is not suffering for 16 minutes, and undead isn't destroying everything in the first 16 minutes. You know, just flatten the curve. Human versus orc. Pretty much the same situation as in the undead human versus undead matchup. This appears to be a fairly well-balanced matchup at the moment, and the main concern should be to not break the balance with changes targeted towards other matchups. I'm not too sure if that is true. Because I really don't understand human versus orc. It always seems to be an arms race between the second heroes. It's oftentimes a little bit flavor of the week, what's stronger, and even what's played. It's a lot of different strategies involved there. But I would slightly disagree and say that it's a little less balanced in favor of human. Especially with the CORSAIR and Headhunter nerfed the way they were. I think this matchup got a little bit worse for Orc, but it's still a balanced matchup, in my opinion. Human versus Night Elf. Statistics point towards this matchup being the real problem child of Warcraft 3 currently. Agreed. The matchup remains fairly unique in that it is, on average, the worst matchup for humans in every MMR bracket. As such, changes for humans should mainly try to target this matchup specifically. Changes that will have spillover effects on other matchups should be met with some form of compensation. Yeah, I think here it's not really that clear that if the human survives for 16, 18 minutes, he all of a sudden has the advantage. This matchup is pretty brutal. And that started, of course, with Keeper Harass a couple of patches ago. And not too long ago, we had Immolation Harass. And in general, early game human is just very weak. I'm always a big fan of asymmetric race design, but maybe it's a slightly too much. So, what are the approaches, Dondolare? What are you suggesting to fix human finally? Arcane Tower build upgrade time reduced to 40 seconds from 50 seconds. This is something that I wanted in the past 2 patch notes I did. Getting an Arcane Tower up is vital for human and to be able to hold any form of expo attempt or limit harass in main base. However, the tower is very vulnerable while upgrading. Reducing upgrade time would increase the chance for the tower to be finished and lower the general opportunity cost for human, so they can stay more active on the map, etc. Currently, it takes 75 seconds from starting a scout tower until an Arcane Tower is finished. This change would make it 65 seconds instead. Yes, I do agree. Arcane Tower build time is, in my opinion, a very good way to address human early game. Always there's some alarm bells ringing. Like, but what about the tower push, Neo? Think about the tower push, Neo. Well, I think it's not that bad. Arcane Towers do not provide some damage, but you are definitely right that if an Arcane Tower is in range of a hero, it's incredibly strong. Because it takes away all the mana in no time. And here comes Dondolare with his second suggestion. Arcane Tower feedback damage reduced to 12 or 14 from 16 on heroes. Basically, reward the changes to Arcane Towers. Arcane Towers got a buff versus human in patch 1.36. Yes, they drain more mana. This made an already very good tower even better. An Arcane Tower, or specifically 2, can now drain a hero's mana in mere seconds. However, This did not change the main problem humans face in the early game, that the outcome of the game is very dependent on whether the tower is alive or not. Of course, Warcraft 3, very snowbally game. Early game matters a lot. If the upgrade time is reduced, it seems fair to reduce the potency slightly. Humans might need to invest in an extra tower more than they used to, which they should more easily afford if they take less early game damage as a result of faster upgrade time. Basic math, right? If less peons die, you have more resources, it is more likely that you have a second tower. In addition, this change probably is needed to avoid early game tower push becoming too powerful versus Night Elf and or keep human versus Undead and Orc versus human in a good state if upgrade time was reduced. I wholeheartedly agree with everything that's said here. The problem is not, or never was, that the Arcane Tower was too weak. The problem was to get it up. We're getting older. We all know that problem. So these changes must be combined. And then I think it's really good. Once an Arcane Tower is up, the base is still not unbreakable or unharassable. You can still harass with units, as we see it with Ghouls over and over. But it's way harder than to run in with a Lich or with a Demon Hunter specifically. Or with a Keeper, whatever. Like this single hero harass is rather boring. And I don't really want to see it. So this, big up. Big up! Yeah, I don't know if there's a dark mode. I don't think so. I'm sorry about that. Blame Google for this. Additionally, Defend research time reduced to 40 seconds from 45 seconds. Defend is an extremely good upgrade, but it has a high opportunity cost as it takes the same research time as producing over 2 footmen. Lowering the research time would make the upgrade more useful and might help especially against Night Elf in the early or mid game. A slight concern might be that this increases the potency of human fast expo versus orc, but as the change is fairly small, I don't think it would move the needle too much. I'm a bit on the fence here, because you will see that there's also, let's read this one as well and then talk all of it. Increase call to arms duration to 45 seconds from 40 seconds, so 5 seconds longer. This will help human in the early game, both when fast expanding, but also in regards to holding off early harassment in general. Might be a bit too much when included with other proposed changes. I agree. Either this or this seems fine, because you also have the early arcane. But 2 out of these 3 seems reasonable. I think Defend is in a good spot, power level wise. It's just 5 seconds, you know, it's seriously not the end of the world. But I think Defend, when you attack it with piercing damage, can feel very overwhelming, and it's kinda not fun. Like when you have piercing damage, you're kinda screwed for a while. So this always has counterplay. Run away from it. All damage types are pretty much okay against militia. I'd rather see this than this. I'd rather see militia time buffed than defend research time nerfed. But I'd be fine with both. One of the two. Another thing, reduce priests cast. Oh, we have to, or do we have this in mind? Yeah, wait, one thing about the tower. No, not really. I was about to bring up a point that if you build something faster, then it's also more HP per second. But since this is an upgrade and not the original scout tower, that doesn't matter. So this is very good. It's even better of a change than I initially thought. Because, yeah, Scout Towers will build at the same time. Reduce priest cast point the cast time from spells to 0.4 instead of 0.5. So that makes it so the casts are faster. And increase cooldown for heal to 1.1 from 1 seconds to keep the healing rate the same. That is very nice. We all know the Disbull meme, and I'm sick and tired of it. But yeah, it's clunky. Priest Dispel is very clunky. So it should just feel good, smooth. And if it doesn't result in more healing, then all for it. All for it. This is an elegant solution to the problem of Dispel taking too long to go through, proposed by Save Orcas. While mostly a quality of life change, it should be seen as a very slight buff to human in all matchups. Yeah, just because it's easier to execute, basically. But, I mean, it's 0.1 seconds. It will be a feel, not a real effect, and I like this. Increase Staff of Sanctuary cost to 225 or 250 from 200, and increase Orb of Fire cost to 275 or 300 from 250. Slightly weakened tier 3 power spike for human versus undead to compensate for a potential more streamlined early game, Arcane Tower and Militia timing. And defend to a degree. Might not need substantial changes with the weaker mana drain from Arcane, which is the most detrimental for undead arguably. I think this might not be enough. I like this approach to not change a unit. These items mostly used against undead, never versus orc. Very rarely versus night elf, I'd say. I wonder if that's enough of a nerf. I mean, you only need one orb. So that's 25 or 50 gold. That's really not much. And if the faster Arcane Tower saves you one peasant, already worth it. Plus the snowball effect. Staffs, you can argue you build more or you buy more of them. So 25 or 50. While I like this should be done probably. But maybe something else needs then a nerf as well. But in general, very good direction. With the potential of very strong human, because their biggest weakness, the early game, will be solved. They will be a lot less weak in the early game with just an Arcane Tower up. But yeah, in general, I agree with all the points. It's pretty conservative. It's not wildly throwing 7 different units changes together. Does not address the heroes. All good. Could make them very, very stable though. Just to keep that in mind. Orc! As we discussed human versus orc already, we don't have to discuss so much more. Orc versus night elf. This used to be concerned a problematic matchup for quite a long time, with night elf being largely favored. While stats suggest it might, I would argue, it depends on when he's talking about, like 2020, 100%. Recently, not so much anymore. While stats suggest it might remain a slightly problematic matchup on the top MMR bracket, results in tournaments are more varied. Exactly. All things considered, one should be careful to include any changes that would be an advantage for Night Elf in this specific matchup. Agree. Very much agree. I enjoyed this matchup for a while, and then something changed. I guess everybody's playing Keeper again, and it got boring again. Orc vs Undead. This matchup seems well balanced at the moment, and the main concern should be not to break the balance with changes targeted towards other matchups. I am not so sure. Like, I have a problem with Undead Ghouls on tier 3, and it also affects this matchup. We saw it in Show Cup this Sunday. Ghouls just crazy good. But let's see what his idea is. Increase Headhunter HP to 375 from 350. This entails reverting a change introduced in 1.36. The change target targeted an already weak spot of the Headhunters, their health, while not addressing any of the issues that made Headhunters very dominant in the meta. Agreed. This change has arguably made Headhunters too squishy, especially versus Undead. Agree. And seemed to be disliked by large parts of the community when introduced. I hated that change. I hated that change so much. Gold cost, etc., all fine, but man, that HP change was bad. Reverted. Razor Moon had a cool idea to change the turn speed, I think it's called. Like how much stutter stepping helps you to cancel the animation and throw the next attack. Some units can do that better, like Headhunters. Some units can do this worse. That was a cool way to approach it, but Headhunters, man, it's so boring to watch also. Like, you put a Nova in there, you put some Black Arrows in there, they're all dead. Also, Mountain King destroys them. It's like, yeah. HP-wise, I felt they were still pretty squishy, but never too, like, now they're too squishy. And it's kind of sad. Because I liked to see Farseer and Headhunters. It was fun when Orc had two styles to play. Hand in hand with that, reduce Headhunter range to 500 or 525 from 550. Troll Berserker's upgrade reinstates 550. Love this. If one wants to reduce the early game potency of Headhunters, as they were really strong, as seems to be the main motivation of the HP change, this seems like a more logical approach to me. This also ensures that there is a larger decision-making process in the number of Headhunters one makes, whether one goes for tier 3 or not. Yeah, as I addressed before, this could be cool. If you're closer to your enemy, there's a better opportunity to catch them with more HP. They're not instant dead, of course. Could be good. Could be good if the survivability is supposed to be addressed and not the damage, for sure. Otherwise, I would love, to experiment with Razor Moon's attack with the attack point change. So you just can't attack that easy that often with Headhunters. But yeah. This I like very much. I think here there are different approaches to this, but taking a bit of strength from the regular Headhunter and not changing the Berserker, I think is exactly what we should do. If one wants to reduce the... Oh, we did that already. Night Elf versus Undead. Is the Cabal ready? Did someone tell the Night Elf Discord that this is the topic now? Night Elf vs Undead. This matchup has been difficult for Night Elf for a while now. Agree. The current numbers suggest that it remains difficult for Night Elves around the 2000 MMR bracket, while at the very top level, any bias towards Undead seems smaller. If you take a look at how Kaho, for example, plays, 100% true. Both statements are 100% true. Special consideration should be taken for the hotly debated Undead Tower push. The rush, while it seems to have fallen out of the very top level of the meta lately, even Lucail is not playing it anymore, is a lot easier to execute than to hold and does not seem logically placed within how Warcraft 3 is meant to function. Agreed! However, it is very difficult to come up with a proper solution on how to fix this issue. Yeah, I guess there's two spots, but we'll see about that. Increase Immolation activation cost to 20 or 15 or 10 from 1. Give the Demon Hunter a bit of cost when to activate his AoE spell. Immolation remains a powerful creeping tool and harassment tool at level 1. Correct. With the removal of an activation cost, the spell really has no proper trade-off when deciding to activate it or not. It's true. Introducing an activation cost would make, or reintroducing an activation cost, probably worded better, would make it a bigger trade-off when deciding on activating it for a second or two. Yeah, it's mostly for like zoning, to kill off a single target, escape a surround, etc. If one wants to keep the potency, mana spent over time, one could even think about reducing mana per second cost even further to compensate. This would mainly be a change that would affect human versus night elf, though it would probably require some compensation in the undead versus night elf matchup. Yeah. The best way, I guess, to stop these ghoul pushes is Immolation. I wouldn't be so hard on it. Like 20 mana is a lot. Like if you turn it on and off, it could just be 20, 40 mana real quick. 10 seems fine. Because it's mostly about moon juice and effectiveness of moon juice, right? So if you lack mana, or if you lack mana, it costs 3 times as much moon juice to give you mana back than HP. So we should be a little bit careful here. It is really dumb though that it doesn't have this activation cost. You can't spam it more or less. 5 or 10? 10 seems okay-ish. But yeah, don't nerf the Demon Hunter too much more. That seems very dangerous. I don't want Keeper back, dude. I really don't. Okay, the compensation that he's talking about here. What is the compensation? Increase Druid of the Claw starting mana to 110 or 115 from 100. Patch 1.35 reduced starting mana of Druid of the Claw to 100 from 125 to remove the possibility of double reju bears from spawn. So if a bear left the lore, you could cast 2 times rejuvenation and it was really strong. However, the change made it so that the Master Druids now spawn with 50 less mana than before, correct? Severely weakening their potency, also correct. This change would make Druids of the Claw a bit more potent again, and especially would help against 1-base pushes from human that now would be more powerful versus a slightly weakened Demon Hunter. This is pretty minimal, I'd say. I think 110 is good. Blizzard will hate this because it's not a nice number, like 50 or 100 or whatever. 125 was definitely too extreme. I can see a bit buff here. That seems fair. And then my favorite part. Let's go. Increase Fan of Knives unit cap 566 from 455. Yes! Warden needs to be buffed. And especially Fan of Knives needs to be buffed. That spell is pathetic. It doesn't do much because of that cap. Warden used to be a staple in several matchups, but is now seldom used. A slight increase in Warden's potency might be in order to compensate for other changes that have made her weaker. However, any changes to Warden need to be somewhat conservative, as she has the potential to quickly become a Dota hero with her ability set. So, this, of course, should go hand in hand with the side of the Arcane Tower address, that not much mana, or not too much mana is burned anymore. Big fan of this. I'm not even sure if it will hurt against like human or economies in general, because when you go harass, it's already 5 units addressed. That is a haunted gold mine. For human, one of the peasants is always in the gold mine. Alright, so this is more for fighting, I guess. And yeah, that's a 20% damage boost, right? I think that is good. Of course, situational. If there's only 5 units, then it's not a damage boost. But if there's more, it's a good damage boost. Without going too ham and, for example, buffing damage, when you can then easily one-shot peasants. I kind of hate that when there's no counterplay to anything. Increase Warden strength to 19 or 20, a little bit more HP. Yeah, I guess why not? But maybe there's some numbers that are off, but yeah, why not? Dondo, you didn't fix the missing dot here. Reduce mana flare damage per mana point 3 from 2-3 from 4, and or reduce splash radius to 175 or 150 from 200. Yeah, I think mana flare is insane. It's absolutely insane. And if it hits, it's really freaking good. I do like when Night Elves are using it, for example, versus Obsidian statues. But in a clumped up group with human casters, for example, holy moly, that's so strong. So I'd probably rather reduce the radius to keep the damage intact, so that it would still be good versus statues, as that is just one target and the damage stays the same. Yeah, there we go. Dondolare. Put the dot. There's the dot. Working on it in real time. Wonderful. Then addressing the damage. I want the damage to be the same, just not too many units at the same time. Mana Flare is an extremely powerful... Oh yeah, we did. Hi, chat. Hello, Mr. Lare. Towards Undead. A general note. Undead is in a somewhat weird position for having received only nerfs in several patches by now, but is still performing well at the top level. Yeah. As such, it is hard to defend any buffs to their core composition. That being said, someone more creative than me might be able to come up with more meta-changing changes that could make the Undead have more options without increasing their general potency. Proposed changes. Nerubian Tower, like in general, I agree with this. If you nerf it more, that's really rough. But some things are still too strong. I think we have to address Undead in a smart way psychologically. As Dondo says, don't touch the core composition too much and buff something else to give an incentive. Because Undeads haven't had an incentive to try something new in a long time. Like since the Cryptlord patch, basically. Nerubian Tower's frost attack speed duration changed from -20 to -20 from -25, and movement speed reduction changed to -40% from -50%. So a 5% nerf on attack speed and a 10% nerf on movement speed. And or Nerubian's Tower frost attack and movement speed reduction duration changed to 5 seconds on units and 2 seconds in heroes when it's now the same. I think this is absolutely necessary. 5-2 seems fair. Would it then still be reapplied? I don't know the duration to be the attack speed, to be honest. Could still be. If you're under the yeah. Would make it easier to run away, I guess. But yeah, it's extreme. Like 50% movement speed reduction for tier 1. That is insane. The Nerubian Tower remains arguably the most powerful tower in the game. However, it is also an integral part of Undead viability in general, so it can't be nerfed into oblivion. True. A slight change in general potency and a reduction in its ability to permanently slow several units and heroes at once, if target switching, is in order. The Nerubian Tower Frost attack remains an exception to the rule that slow and status effect lasts shorter on heroes. These changes might especially help Night Elf when trying to harass first expo attempts and or defending tower rushes a bit more effectively. I agree with that. 5 seconds slow on hero is insane, guys. Like, let's be honest. Both, I don't know. One of them, for sure. And if it's only one hero harassing, I'm pretty sure you're still perma-slowed. It's just when you switch the targets. that it's the difference. To make up for that, Haunted Goldmine build time reduced to 105 from 110. A slight reduction in build time to compensate for a weaker Nerubian Tower in general. This would probably be needed versus human if Nerubian changes go through. Against Night Elf, the main problem was ever reaching the Goldmine Acolyte, so the Nerubian change should be more impactful than the Goldmine timing. Yeah, could be cool. In general, I would like to see more Undead late game and less Undead timing pushes. Because I feel like timing pushes are kind of boring. I want an exchange. I want a back and forth, ideally. And that's oftentimes more, like that's my flavor of Warcraft. You can see a beauty in a 9-minute timing push. 100% you can. But in my opinion, the late game Undead versus Human can be beautiful. The late game Undead versus Night Elf with the crows coming in is beautiful. That's my Warcraft. And that will help probably. Why not? Give the Gargoyles prioritizability 2 different hotkeys for their toggle modes. Dude, the toggle is so screwed. An obvious quality of life change that should have been implemented a long time ago. Would also function as a slight buff to Gargoyles' anti-air ability. That would be lovely. An obvious quality, yeah. Reduce Graveyard's build time from 75 seconds to 75 seconds from 80 seconds. Make the first corpse spawn 5 seconds, not 15 after the building's completed. This is so annoying, by the way. This is really annoying. You're looking forward to that graveyard finally there. I can use my rod in the base. Boom. No, it has to wait a little longer. Bad. An old suggestion from Remo. Okay, so obviously that's bad then. To streamline Undead builds slightly and make Fiend builds slightly more viable, user-friendly. Yeah, I would love to be able to have more variety. So I almost feel like Fiend builds need some help. Not saying that Fiends in general are too weak, because Fiends are damn amazing. I would love to see them more often and more variety to even things out. Because we get Ghouls in every matchup as an opener. And that wasn't the case for a long time. Other general changes. Revert the item drop table changes introduced in 1.3.6. Keep the Ring of the Archmage. There are now way too many rings on the drop table. True. This is effectively a nerf to heroes that rely more on damage output and buff on heroes that thrive on more sustainability. True. It is probably easier to revert the drop table back to pre-1.3.6 and go from there than try to do individual changes from where it currently stands. Ring of Archmage can remain in the drop pool, however. You know, I'm a little weird. I kinda like the drops now. We see, it's just a feeling, I don't have evidence on this. We see more fun fights than before. Sometimes it gets really absurd. And the number of rings is crazy, I agree. And it's a little bit too much, but I think it was the right direction. I'd rather see a Demon Hunter Blade Master with too much armor than the claws in the early game that 100% decide the game. Or influence the game, heavily influence the game. Let's put me that way. I don't think we have to revert this, to be honest. The ring thing, yep, I agree. It's kind of bad. I also would say the Twisted Meadows ring +5 thing should absolutely be deleted from that table. There is definitely a change. I'm not really pro this. I like the claw nerf. I like tanky heroes. I wouldn't sign this. I still think the drop tables aren't perfect, and we should definitely tinker with it if that's something they want to address. But reverting them to old, Not a big fan. Reduce a number of available maps in the pool. Okay, that's BattleNet. I don't really mind. Yeah, in general, a lot of this gets a thumbs up. A lot of this. It's pretty conservative. And I think that's good. I really like the Arcane Tower suggestion. Either one of this, I think. I think this does less harm and human players will be happier. So probably rather this than this. Give some power back to Headhunters to promote variety. Stabilize human a little. While I really like that races have weaknesses. Some weaknesses are maybe a little bit too extreme. And that brings me to, like, I sign most of the rest. And I would like the Warden to be buffed because I want to see more Warden. She's such a beautiful hero. Need to see her more. I have a personal balance complaint that a few people bring up, but not too many. And that to me is Ghouls. I think Frenzy Ghouls are terrible. Terribly good. They ruin a lot. They don't give too much XP, so you can throw them at your opponent to overwhelm them. They don't cost too much, so you can spam them, and they are beasts. They do so much damage. I think Ghouls on tier 1 are good. On tier 2, maybe a little weak, but depending on how you use them, you don't want to throw them into a direct fight anyway. On tier 3, crazy good. So, the logical thing is nerf Frenzy. I think you should nerf the numbers on Frenzy a little bit. Yeah, the Undeads would be whining, now they take the last good thing away from us. How are we supposed to play the humans now? Yeah, I get that. But there's a 9-minute push versus Night Elf that is make or break, and it's freaking boring. It's hard to execute, obviously. You gotta hit that timing hard. It's not easy. But goddamn, it's so boring. I can't see more 9-minute timing pushes. Please. They're incredible versus human. 1-0 build an army of just Ghouls and beat Lyn. They are overwhelming. So 30% seems fair. Maybe even research time a little bit. One or the other. Either you weaken the timing pushes and give the other races more time to prepare for the timing pushes, or you weaken it by a bit. Like, this is crazy. So yeah. Next time someone posts on Reddit that I hate human and only want to promote undead, please clip this and send it to the person. Yeah, apart from that, I agree with a lot. So good stuff. I would love to see involve people in the community. Doesn't matter what your MMR range is. When you watch 2,000 hours of Warcraft every week, tell us your idea of, like, balance. What's up? What's your opinion? What are your suggestions? This is meant to balance the meta that we currently have, not put a new flavor on things, right? If you're a 2000 MMR player or above, let us know. What do you think? What do you think of Dondo's suggestions? What do you think of my comments? Put it out there. Make videos. Make posts. Last time, or not last time, but there was a time where we had a Reddit thread of community feedback suggestions. Cephid, Scars, all these people. They put in the work. And don't just do it like, be better than Blizzard, everybody. Blizzard throws these patch notes out there. We do this, 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 this. Why? We will not tell you. Be like Dondo and explain it. Why do you think this is necessary? And why do you think your proposed changes are the right way to do it? That would be wonderful. You can sit in your Discord chats all day and complain and whine and bitch. But it's also your time to step up and be productive. And that would be lovely.